Hi there. We are on day 217 of our Through the Bible in 1 Year. Let's jump over there. We are reading 2 chapters in 2 Kings and 2 chapters in 2 Chronicles, which will be the same story, twice, slightly different details. Must admit, I never realized that these books were basically the same books, but different details. So, let's go. Judah's King Josiah. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king and reigned 31 years. Wow. His mother's name was Jedidah, daughter of Adiah. She was from Bochaz. Right. He did what was right in the Lord's sight and walked in all the ways of his ancestor David. He did not turn to the right or to the left. That's what Solomon said. Josiah repairs the temple. In the 18th year of King Josiah, the king sent the court secretary, that person of that place, of son of this person, to the Lord's temple, saying, "Go up to the Hilkiah the high priest, so that he may total up the money brought into the Lord's temple, the money the doorkeepers shall collect from the people. It is to be put into the hands of those doing the work, those who oversee the Lord's temple there, and they in turn are to give it to the workmen in the Lord's temple to repair the damage. They are to give it to the carpenters, builders, and masons to buy timber and quarried stone to repair the temple. But no accounting is to be required for them for the money put into their hands, since they work with integrity." Wow. So wish they would do that today. The book of the law found. Hilkiah the high priest told Shaphan, the court secretary, "I have found the book of the law in the Lord's temple." And he gave the book to Shaphan, who read it. Then Shaphan, the court secretary, went to the king and reported, "Your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the temple and put it into the hands of those doing the work, those who oversee the Lord's temple." Then Shaphan, the court secretary, told the king, "Hilkiah the priest has given me a book." And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. Then he commanded Hilkiah the priest, Hilkiah son of Shaphan, the court secretary, and the king's servant Asaiah, "Go and inquire of the Lord for me, the people of all Judah, about the instruction in this book that has been found. For great is the Lord's wrath that is kindled against us, because our ancestors have not obeyed the words of this book in order to do everything written about us." Huldah, we don't know who Huldah is. So Hilkiah the priest and him and all these people, prophetess, I'm not saying these names, I'm sorry. Keeper of the wardrobe, she lived in Jerusalem in the 2nd district. They spoke with her. Prophetess. She said to them, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. Say to the man who sent you to me, this is what the Lord says. I am about to bring disaster on this place and all its inhabitants, fulfilling all the words of the book that the king of Judah has read. Because they have abandoned me and burned incense to other gods in order to provoke me with all the work of their hands, my wrath will be kindled against this place, and it will not be quenched. So say this to the king of Judah who sent you to inquire of the Lord. This is what the Lord God of Israel says. As for the words that you heard, because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before the Lord when you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they will become a desolation and a curse, and because you have torn your clothes and wept before me, I myself have heard you. This is the Lord's declaration. Therefore I will indeed gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes will not see all the disaster that I am bringing on this place." Then they reported to the king. Wow. So the king sent messengers, and they gathered all the elders of Jerusalem and Judah to him. Then the king went to the Lord's temple with all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, as well as the priests and the prophets, all the people from the youngest to the oldest. As they listened, he read all the words of the book of the covenant that had been found in the Lord's temple. Next the king stood by the pillar and made a covenant in the presence of the Lord to follow the Lord and to keep his commands, his decrees, his statutes with all his mind and with all his heart, and to carry out the words of this covenant that were written in this book. All the people agreed to the covenant. Josiah's reforms. That was only 3 verses? Man. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priest of the 2nd rank of the doorkeepers to bring out of the Lord's temple all the articles made for Baal, Asherah, and the whole heavenly host. He burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. Then he did away with the idolatrous priests, you got that? The kings of Judah had appointed to burn incense at the high places in the city of Judah and in the areas surrounding Jerusalem. They had burned incense to Baal and to the sun, moon, constellations, and the whole heavenly host. He brought out the Asherah pole from the Lord's temple to the Kidron Valley outside Jerusalem. He burned it at the Kidron Valley, beat it to dust, and threw its dust on the graves of the common people. He also tore the houses of the male cult prostitutes that were in the Lord's temple, in which the women were weaving tapestries for Asherah. Then Josiah brought all the priests from the cities of Judah, and he defiled the high places from Geba to Beersheba, where the priests had burned incense. He tore down the high places and the gates of the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, on the left side of the gate. The priests in the high places, however, did not come up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem. Instead, they ate unleavened bread with their fellow priests. He defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of Hinnom, so that no one could make his son or daughter pass through the fire to Molech. Wow. He did away with the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun. They had been at the entrance of the Lord's temple and in the precincts and by the chamber of Nathan Melech, the court official, and he burned up the chariots of the sun. The king tore down the altars that were on the roof, Ahaz's upper chamber, that the kings of Judah had made, and the altars of Manasseh had made in the two courtyards of the Lord's temple. Then he smashed them there and threw their dust into the Kidron Valley. The king also defiled the high places that were across from Jerusalem to the south of the Mount of Destruction, which King Solomon of Israel had built for Asheroth, the detestable idol of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, for Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. He broke the sacred pillars into pieces, cut down the Asherah poles, and filled their places with human bones. He even tore down the altar at Bethel in the high place of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin, had made. Then burned the high place, crushed it to dust, and burned the Asherah. As Josiah turned, he saw the tombs there on the mountain. He sent someone to take the bones out of the tombs, and he burned them on the altar. He defiled it according to the word of the Lord, proclaimed by the man of God who proclaimed these things. Then he said, "What is this monument I see?" The men of the city told him, It is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things that you have done to the altar at Bethel. So he said, "Let him rest. Don't let anyone disturb his bones." So they left his bones undisturbed with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. Josiah also removed all the shrines and the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord. Josiah did the same things to them that he had done at Bethel. He slaughtered on the altars all the priests of the high places who were there, and he burned human bones on the altars. Then he returned to Jerusalem. Man, you don't want to make this king mad, huh? Passover observed. The king commanded all the people, "Keep the Passover of the Lord your God as written in the book of the covenant." No such Passover had ever been kept from the time of the judges who judged Israel through the entire time of the kings of Israel and Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, this Passover was observed to the Lord in Jerusalem. Further zeal for the Lord. In addition, Josiah removed the mediums, spirits, household idols, images, and all the detestable things that were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem. He did this in order to carry out the words of the law that were written in the book of Hilkiah, the priest, found in the Lord's temple. Before him there was no king like him, who turned to the Lord with all his mind and with all his heart and with all his strength, according to the law of Moses, and no one like him arose after him. Well, in spite of all that, the Lord did not turn from the fury of his great burning anger, which burned against Judah because of all that Manasseh had provoked him with. For the Lord said, I will also remove Judah from my sight, just as I have removed Israel. I will reject this city, Jerusalem, that I have chosen, and the temple about it, which I said my name will be there. Josiah's death. The rest of the events of Josiah, along with his accomplishments, are written in the historical record of Judah's kings. During his reign, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, marched up to help the king of Assyria at the Euphrates River. King Josiah went to confront him, and at Megiddo, when Necho saw him, he killed him. From Megiddo, his servants carried his dead body in a chariot, brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own tomb. Then the common people took Jehoahaz, son of Josiah, anointed him and made him king in place of his father. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he became king and reigned 3 months. Wow. His mother's name was all this stuff, and everywhere he's from. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Riblah in the land of Hamath to keep him from reigning at Jerusalem, and he imposed on the land a fine of 7,500 pounds of silver and 75 pounds of gold. Judah's king Jehoiakim. Jehoiakim, right. The Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, son of Josiah, king in place of his father Josiah, and changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim, to something you can't pronounce, to change it to something you cannot pronounce. Okay. But Necho took Jehoiada and went to Egypt, and he died there. So Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but at Pharaoh's command he taxed the land to give the money. He exacted the silver and gold from the common people, each man according to his assessment, to give to the Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was this. From there, and he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. These were awful. What do you mean wicked people? God gives you everything and you turn and you thumb your nose at him. Man, these people drive me crazy. Okay, let's read the whole story all over again in 2 Chronicles. Okay, here we go. This is going to sound familiar. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king and reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did what was right in the Lord's sight and walked in the ways of his ancestor David and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. Jehoiakim's reform, and in the 8 years of his reign, while he was still a youth, Josiah began to seek the God of his ancestor David, and in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherah poles, carved images, and cast images. Then in his presence the altars and the Baals were torn down, and he chopped down the incense altars that were above them. He shattered the Asherah poles and carved the images and the cast images and crushed them to death to scatter them over the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. He burned the bones of the priests on their altars. He killed them, burned the bones on their own altars. So he cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. He did the same in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, and Simeon, and as far as Naphtali, and on the other altars. So he cleansed Judah. And on their surrounding mountain shrines, he tore down the altars, and he smashed the Asherah poles and the graved images to powder. He chopped down all the incense altars throughout the land of Israel and returned to Jerusalem. Josiah repaired the temple in the 8th year of his reign in order to cleanse the land. And the temple, Josiah sent Shaphan of Messiah along with these people, the governor of the city and the court historian Joah and John of Joash, to repair the temple of the Lord his God. So they went to Hilkiah the high priest and gave him the money brought into God's temple. The Levites and the doorkeepers that collected money from Manasseh, Ephraim, and from the entire remnant of Israel, and from all of Judah, Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They put it into the hands of those doing the work, those who oversaw the Lord's temple. They gave it to the workmen who were working in the Lord's temple to repair and restore the temple. They gave it to the carpenters and the builders, and they also used it to buy quarried stone and timbers for joining and making beams for the buildings that Judah's kings had destroyed. The men were doing the work with integrity. Their overseers were these people, Levites and the Merarites and Jeconiah and Boon, and all these people that I can't pronounce, as supervisors. Who cares? The Levites were all skilled with musical instruments. They were also over all the porters and were supervising all those doing the work task by task. Some of the Levites were secretaries, officers, and gatekeepers. The cover of the book of law. When they brought out the money that had been deposited in the Lord's temple, Hilkiah priest found the book of the law of the Lord written by the hand of Moses. Wow. Consequently, Hilkiah told Shaphan, the court secretary, I found the book of the law in the Lord's temple, and he gave the book to Shaphan. Shaphan took the book to the king, and also reported, your servants are doing all that is placed in their hands. They have emptied out the money that was found in the Lord's temple and put it in the hand of the overseers and the hand of those doing the work. Then Shaphan, court secretary, told the king Hilkiah, the priest gave me a book, and Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. When the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes, and he commanded Hilkiah and all those people that I can't pronounce, the court secretary and the king's servant, and said, go ask Yahweh for me and for those remaining in Israel and Judah concerning the words of the book that was found. For great is the Lord's wrath that is poured out on us because of our fathers have not kept the word of the Lord in order to do everything written in this book. Hold those prophecy of judgment. So Hilkiah and those the king had designated went to the prophetess Huldah, the wife of Shallum, son of keeper of the wardrobe. She lived in Jerusalem in the 2nd district. They spoke to her about this. She said to them, this is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says. Say to the man who sent you to me, this is what Yahweh says. I am about to bring disaster on this place and on its inhabitants, fulfilling all the curses written in the book that they have read in the presence of the king of Judah, because they have abandoned me and burned incense to other gods in order to provoke me with all the works of their hands. My wrath is poured out on this place and will not be quenched. Say this to the king of Judah who sent you to ask Yahweh. This is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says. As for the words you heard, because your heart was tender and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, because you humbled yourself before me and tore your clothes and went before me, I myself have heard. This is the Lord's declaration. I will indeed gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. Your eyes will not see all the disaster that I am bringing on this place and on its inhabitants. Then they reported to the king. Affirmation of the covenant of Josiah's people. So the king sent messengers and gathered all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. The king went up to the Lord's temple with all the men of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, as well as the priests and the Levites. All the people from great to small, he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant that had been found in the Lord's temple. Then the king stood at his post and made a covenant in the Lord's presence to follow the Lord and to keep his commands, his decrees, his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, and to carry out the words of the covenant written in this book. He had all those present in Jerusalem and Benjamin agree to it. So all the inhabitants of Jerusalem carried out the covenant of God, the God of their ancestors. So Josiah removed everything that was detestable from all the lands belonging to the Israelites, and he required all who were present in Israel to serve the Lord God, though this is a reign they did not turn aside from following Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, throughout his reign. Right? Josiah observed the Lord's Passover and slaughtered the Passover lambs on the 14th day of the first month. He appointed the priests to their responsibilities and encouraged them to serve in the Lord's temple. He said to the Levites who taught all Israel the holy things of the Lord, "Put the holy ark in the temple built by Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, since you do not have to carry it on your shoulders. Now serve Yahweh your God and his people Israel. Organize your ancestral houses by your divisions according to written instruction of David, king of Israel, that is, and that of his son Solomon. Serve in the holy place by the divisions of the ancestral houses for your brothers and the lay people, and the distribution of the tribunal household of the Levites. Slaughter the Passover lambs, consecrate yourselves, and make preparations for your brothers to carry out the word of the Lord through Moses." Then Josiah donated 30,000 sheep, lambs, and young goats, plus 3,000 bulls from his own possessions for the Passover sacrifices for all the lay people who were present. There were millions, okay? His officials also donated willingly for the people, the priests and the Levites, Hilkiah, Zechariah, Jegadiah, the chief officials of Godsinger, give 2,600 Passover sacrifices and 300 bulls for the priests. Conaniah and his brother Shema and all those people, blah, 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 blah. Officers of the Levites donated 5,000 Passover sacrifices for the Levites plus 500 bulls. So the service was established. The priests stood at their posts and the Levites in their division according to the king's command. Then they slaughtered the Passover lambs, and while the Levites were skinning the animals, the priests sprinkled the blood they had been given. They removed the burnt offerings so that they might be given to the divisions of the ancestral houses of the lay people to offer to the Lord according to what is written in the book of Moses. They did the same with the bulls. They roasted the Passover lambs with fire according to regulation. They boiled the holy sacrifices in pots, kettles, and bowls, and they quickly brought them to the lay people. Afterwards, they made preparations for themselves and for the priests, since the priests, the descendants of Aaron, were busy offering up burnt offerings and fat until night. So the Levites made preparations for themselves and for the priests and the descendants of Aaron. The singers and descendants of Asaph were at their stations, according to the command of David, Asaph, Heman, Judah, and the king's seer. Also the gatekeepers were at each one. None of them left their task because their Levite brothers had made their preparations for them. So all the service of the Lord was established that day for observing the Passover, for the burnt offerings, and for the altar of the Lord, according to the command of King Josiah. The Israelites who were present in Judah also observed the Passover at that time in the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. No Passover had been observed like it in Israel since the days of Samuel the prophet. None of the kings of Israel observed the Passover like that one that Josiah observed. With the priests, the Levites, all the Judah, the Israelites who were present in Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of Josiah's reign, this Passover was observed. Josiah's last deeds and breath. After all this, Josiah prepared for the temple. Necho, the king of Egypt, marched up to fight at Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to confront him. But Necho sent messengers to him, saying, "What is the issue between you and me, king of Judah? I have not come against you today, but I am fighting another dynasty. God told me to hurry. Stop opposing God who is with me. Don't make him destroy you." But Josiah did not turn away from him. Instead, in order to fight him, he disguised himself. He did not listen to Necho's words from the mouth of God, but went to the valley of Megiddo to fight. The archers shot King Josiah, and he said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am severely wounded." So his servants took him out of the war chariot, carried him to his second chariot, and brought him to Jerusalem. Then he died, and they buried him in the tomb of his fathers. All Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. Jeremiah chanted a dirge over Josiah, and all the singing men and singing women still speak of Josiah in their dirges to this very day. They established him as a statute of Israel, and they indeed are written in the dirges. The rest of the events of Josiah's reign, along with his deeds of faithful love according to what is written in the law of the Lord, and his words from beginning to end, are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. So, there you go. Same story twice, all about Josiah, a good person. And tomorrow reading Zephaniah. I don't even know what Zephaniah is. Okay? And then Jeremiah. We'll be in Jeremiah for a long time. Jeremiah is a big book. So, there you have it. That is. Wait, messing this up. Huh? So, there you go. That's through the Bible in 1 year. I'm confused here, but anyway, that was day 217, and we know what we're reading tomorrow, and then we'll be in Jeremiah for a while. Give us a like if you think about it. Catch up to many you may have missed. You want to see you got the whole. We're reading all these stories because we want to read the entire Bible in a year and not miss any of it, even though it's tempting. So there you go. Until tomorrow, we'll do it again. See ya.